let's start with the conversation I wanted to have.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's a broad topic, but I want to look at it from different perspectives. Like I've always had a feeling that African thought or Pan-Africanism, right? The idea isn't really explored in our generation. Not just by people in the academic scene, but also by just like the layman, people who have a perspective on this, right? Because we all grew up in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
All of us suffer or benefit in one way from where Africa is right now.
Yeah.
But most of us don't have the time to sit down and think or talk about it. So the topic I'm trying to approach from different sides today is what's going on in Africa. And like, why is it where it is? What are some of the issues? How did we get here? That's a massive question.
Yeah, man.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
The beginning is always a good place to start.
Beautiful.
What was your growing up? What was your kind of understanding of what Africa was? And like, what was your relationship to the continent of Africa?
Oh, man. Hey. I think like everybody else that sort of had a bit of a European in them or had a bit of had experienced this side of the world a little bit, Africa is always seen as a bad thing. Africa is always seen as like the place where, like, let me even put into let me not start at the very beginning, but let me start at the point of like, let's say secondary school. Any child that's bad in secondary school, primary school, the first threat from your black mum or your black father is, I'm gonna send you back to Africa. 100%. This is the whole mentality around it. The whole thing that keeps us petrified of back home is ingrained in our own homes. Our parents are happily to tell us that bad behavior, you get sent back home. And back home is the worst place on earth. Like, can you imagine? Imagine saying that to me right now. Like, my boss comes up to me and he's like, Darren, like, your work is so poor. We can't handle this anymore. If you continue to perform this way at work, I'm sending you back to Africa. I would purposely work bad, so he would have to send me back to Africa, literally. So in terms of our mindset and how I felt about the place, it was like around that period, it was just the worst thing for me. And I remember when I first moved here, because I spent like my formative years up until like the age of 9, I spent it growing up in Ghana. And up until when I was able to come here, it was like, even that, my leaving and coming here, like literally up until the last day that I was able to like come to this country, it was like a whole thing. Like, congratulations, Darren, you're going to the UK. Like, oh my gosh, you're going to be in London. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm excited. I'm so happy. Up until I got here. And then it's like the whole system, the whole understanding, the whole mindset is just completely different. We're so disconnected. Like, our pleasures and our joys and what we find important has now been turned around. And now we need to reshape it in a different society at such a young age as well, mind you. So I think for me, it was sort of like you're coming to England or you're coming to the UK and you're better off. It's better than being in Africa where you are with your people and then like that kind of sticks inside your head and it breeds you within that culture. And so the culture now you are now in, you have to adopt it in a certain light. And yeah, for me, not anymore, man.
All right.
Not anymore.
Like, just knowing that along because, especially go back to what you said about like parents saying, I'm going to send it to
Yeah, you can relate, right?
That's relatable. Every person I've spoken to,
Yeah.
that be African.
Yeah.
Did your parents be like, yeah, I was like, what? Did I have a meeting and decided, you know what? I'm going to traumatize this.
Yeah.
I'm going to send them back home.
And then this is how you traumatize me. What?
It's kind of mad, but I get it. Now I'm older, I can see the thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
To them, Africa was struggle.
Yeah.
It was pain.
Yeah.
So I'm here. You don't want to go back to that pain, but we don't have that. We don't have anything to kind of compare it to. We only have this. So like we see that as now being a place where we don't feel like home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they instill in that. And then plus on that, you get the media representation of Africa.
Very true.
Everything I always say, I remember one time I saw this video of a kid, obviously one of these donate videos.
Yeah.
And the kid was sitting there, obviously hungry, and there was a fight like borrow, and if I land on his eye, and he did. I was like, oh, save
I
on.
know, bro.
I was so like, I viscerally felt that, oh, this is how they want to present it.
Yeah.
And I get it.
Yeah.
Yes, sometimes you need to do stuff in order to help people. And one of the ways they did that was, okay, show the poverty and people feel an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
from there, then your emotional reaction becomes embedded into your identity.
It becomes, you also have that sort of perception of your own place. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Talk to me a little bit more about that then. What's the representation of like your home, you know, you have such a unique experience too, because talk about going back from becoming,
Yeah.
what was that like? How did you view like how they represented African in media, knowing what it was like when you really went back?
I mean, I think for me, this is, and I think you have quite a similar experience to me of like moving here and living now in this culture. I think you very much think less about back home. You very much try to understand where you are and what you want to do here. So back home is no longer like, your parents have already told you that it's the worst place in your world. You're bad. If you fuck up, you're going there. Excuse me. But like, you're going back. So for me, it wasn't something that I even wanted to think about. I just wanted to learn English, get my English right, start speaking with a bit of twang to it, start speaking like all of, and I think the joy and the beautiful memories that I had growing up just started to fade away more and more and more and more. The media is never going to show you the beauty of it. They're never going to, even till this day, up until like our own people are absolutely going out their way to show us how beautiful back home is, the mass media is not going to do that. So as children, as young growing up adults, whatever it is, we're not within the demographic for them to show us all this beautiful stuff. No, they already wanna instill in us their culture or the system that we're in, and they want to get us more deep rooted into it. Which again, it's not bad, but you can't lose where you're from.
Absolutely.
For me, I don't think I was very much focused on Africa anymore. I had already seen it as bad, and in my head it was bad. That was it. I was doing what I needed to do here. For me, I felt there was always a part of me that wanted to scream out and say, "What are you doing?" Like, yeah, you're doing something beautiful. You're understanding this culture that you're in now. But you have to understand it, mind you. You can't. This place will very much make you feel like the odd one out if you allow yourself to.
Absolutely.
And in order to not feel like the odd one out, you pick up these little habits that makes you feel like, oh, well, I'm one of them. Well, I'm one of, but you're not. You then, at a young age, if you're lucky enough, you can then assimilate the two together and say, oh, well, this is where I came from. This is where all my happy memories are. This is where my joy is from. And this is how I'm going to bring it into it. For me, it took a while for me to learn that. It took a long time. Like, even now, I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure out where my Africa begins and my English begins. Like, I'm still trying to find that balance. But in terms of my experience, it was just very deep-rooted in understanding and learning this culture. And, having Black European parents, African European parents, they will make you aware that your culture back there is your culture back there. Don't forget it. Like, when you come home, you speak G. When you're eating, you eat your local dishes. But when you leave the house, you better make sure you look just like the white man. You better assimilate. You better say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. You better make sure that you are representing the household in the right way. And
that is such an interesting tension too, because like, I completely 100% everything you said, I completely agree. I completely relate to. And I think it's such an interesting thing that we could, two people from similar, obviously, but like have the same experience to the culture there. And it shows something about how this culture forces you to adapt, and the ways it forces you to adapt. Because you are right. For me, it was the same thing. How do I take English as a way to understand the English culture? And I fell right into literature. I fell right into like language and all of this, and like as
beautiful, man.
Understand and integrate, and then I became interested in people, and that just became like my journey. But I think like one big thing was like when I was a kid, my mom always be like, "Oh, you have to read. Here's the books. You got to read your books. You got to." So I read even as a kid. Like, I remember, like, reading big books.
Yeah.
I was like part of them, part of that training, a part of that growth.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to reflect on that as an adult.
Yeah.
And I was doing this recently. I a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
I wrote a blog that I talked about this tension of being from Africa, but also growing up here, and like what parts of myself represented in what. So like I looked at it in my head, I was like, okay, Africa is like the traditional side for me,
Yeah.
Africa is like the soul of who I am.
Yeah.
And like I guess England became the intellect. England became the mind and how I would move in it. And that like merging of the two became a new culture.
Yeah.
And like I had to come to terms with that new culture. Not feel like I was displaced in either one.
Beautiful.
I feel like one of me being both was actually the rightful place of who I'm supposed to be.
Freedom.
I want to now know about like, because to me, a large part of that was figuring out what I wasn't taught.
Yeah.
And going back into my Africanness and like drawing all these influences, or even just, even doing just Africa.
Yeah.
But learning about like Kwame Nkrumah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like all these like national heroes that we have close to our hearts and what they mean, the things they say.
Absolutely.
What were some of the things that you had to relearn about Africa? Once you start looking back and find that kind of place to be talking about, what were some of the things that you realized you weren't being taught?
Being taught is, I can easily say everything. Like, I wasn't being taught anything. Like, I mean, no, again, let me give a shout out to my parents around this time. Like, where they all had their shortcomings, their individuality, they always let it stick out. So the culture that they believed in always remained the same. Yes, try to show out your Englishness when you leave the house, or your English side. Like, understand that you're still a black man at the end of the day, and your experiences are going to be completely different. But you're in the system, learn their system, educate yourself with it. And for me, it was more so having to leave here, which is like having to leave this entire continent and go back to the continent of Africa. I had to learn it the hard way. Literally. Like, my story was an easy story of getting sent back home because I was being bad. That was an easy story. Like, I can easily say that was my story. But I don't see that perspective. I don't see it from that perspective at all. I see it as God said, I need to save my kid. And he took me back to my roots in order for me to get saved. When I went back, I remember it took a while for me to assimilate. Like, there was a whole... Like, again, when you go back, the culture makes you feel superior because you've been over here. Without the understanding or without even the know-how that they are the more superior people. Hey, listen.
That's a different story. But
That's a different story, but we'll get to it. But, like, the idea that you being here and you living here and you having the experience and you having sort of this culture within your system flowing through your veins is more superior, it was a kind of hard thing for me to step away from. Because as soon as I spoke, everyone felt like, oh, well, you've been somewhere before. You must have got money, you must have this, you must have that. I was like, brother, my mom's a chef. She serves people food. Like, I'm right here with you. Don't get me wrong. I'm right here with you. You need to see this. Like, you need to see this version. It ain't rainbows and sunshines. There's a version of the cultures where in this part of the world, they're showing you the struggles of Africa. If you go back to Africa, they're also showing you the beauty of here.
So interesting. That's so true. Yeah.
They're not making you see. I don't know if you experienced this when you went back, man.
Absolutely, I experienced that. And it was like in just how older people would treat me. Obviously, I have the kind of like, I was born with that respect for older people.
Yeah.
But then they would come in and they would start to, because of, I guess, they seen that you were from abroad.
Yes.
You know that thing, bugger.
Yeah. Bugger's home. Bugger's in town, bro.
It's just someone who has money and he's back home.
Yeah.
You got money, you're back home, you're true sense of respect.
Yeah.
And it completely flips your view of yourself, but also like how they view it. And it's seen been presented in a certain type of way.
Exactly. And how we present it to ourselves is also a poor thing. Now we're a bit lucky because people that have experienced it more come back home and they're like, listen, take your time. Don't stop trying to rush and come to Europe and just embrace the culture a bit more and let it find you. And you will see your success within your own culture. But like, if we go home right now, brother, the majority of people just want to make it here. They want to come here. Don't get me wrong. Like, if I am being very open and transparent, our people are struggling back home. Not because of like, there's mass famine or they can't grow crops, or it's because of us, the people. We are the reasons why there's so much struggle happening, because we are picking greed and we're picking corruption over protecting our own. And because we're failing to do this, we just want to leave. Like, I think the statistics for 2024 statistics for the young adults was about, don't fact check me on this, I'm sorry.
There's no fact check.
But don't fact check me, but
No fact check.
yeah, no fact check. Yeah. There's like 75% of like the young adults that finish university just want to leave.
That's so bad for economy. That's so bad for a culture.
Nobody wants to stay and earn money and work within there because there's not even that much money to earn. If the culture was like, I wouldn't even say booming. If the culture was for the people, if the system was for the people, if the people in power were for the people, we would be like the success of the continent or the country, or like it would just be astronomical. But the problem is we are not finding it within ourselves. We're not finding it within ourselves to say no. Actually, we need to do this for ourselves. This is what Patrice Lumumba tried to do. This is what Nkrumah trying to do. Pan-Africanism.
You know what I mean? All right, let's talk about this. We've talked about the topic for a long time. Let's actually not talk about it.
Man.
Colonialism, all of this, and then the questions of colonialism. Okay, so I often think, right, it's two parts. Because my question is always, I ask people all the time, what is going on with Africa?
Okay.
What is the core problem of Africa? How do we solve it, right?
Okay.
And for me, it comes, let's say, three parts. Right is obviously the biggest one is economic, right? But where does the economic thing come from? Is it either the colonialism and what's happened because of what the colonial powers and the resources they extracted?
Yeah.
Or is it the mentality that's currently being prevalent in the continent because of, you know, the need and the lack of economic opportunities? You know, where would you start? How would you look at it? Would you look at someone wants to ask you what is the problem in Africa? How would you approach the question?
I mean,